Hello, everybody, and thanks for listening. So, I decided to do another video because my other video, you might can hear some of my other video, but I'm doing another video because I had a lot of background. I guess it was from like the commercials. Sometimes there's commercials and ads that pop up. So, my topic was about the homelessness or the homeless crisis that is happening in Los Angeles, California. And so, like I had used in my previous video, a scene where you can see of downtown where there's tents. This also is a scene where you can see tents. Actually, this is not as extreme as what it really looks like, so I just used this, but there are some other um, scenes where you can see more tents. And so, Los Angeles County um, has a huge problem with homelessness. And so, what I was saying in my previous video is that a lot of the homelessness is not only mental illness and drug or substance abuse of some sort, it is the high rents, and the rent increases for a lot of the luxury apartments and condominiums that they've been building in rapid pace. And so what I was saying is that in the early 80s, I remember when rent, the highest it ever gotten was probably like not even over 800 um, in the early 80s, and then maybe 900 was probably the highest. Um, a lot of apartments were accessible, they were more affordable, and you could make a start. Even if you're a young person, you could get out and make a start and find a place. But now it is too expensive. It's too high, the rents. They have rent increases that are extremely unfair to people, and people are living paycheck to paycheck. So that's what I noticed that has changed a lot over the years, where people would work one job. Now you feel forced to work two and three jobs just to make ends meet. And so it has gotten to a point to where a lot of people are suffering economically. And what I wanted to add, I know it shows it. All of these that you're seeing from a distance are graphs about where homeless sleep in LA. This was 2019. LA County homelessness soars. LA County homeless population jumps. And so these are actually more recent and current graphs on, projected numbers of the homelessness that has increased from 2011 to 2019. In 2011, it was 39,414. It jumped from 2011 to 2018 at 52,765 people, and now it is at 58,936 in 2019, and now we're approaching the year 2020. And so homeless population and homelessness is increasing. And why? It's not only just substance abuse or that people have mental illness. Yes, that is happening, but there's people who are families who are living paycheck to paycheck. They don't make high rise income. A lot of these developers are wanting 2K and 3K, 4K, sometimes 6K a month. They won't wait until you get paid. They give you a rent increase unfairly. They don't have, what you call a grace period to wait for you to pay the rent. They won't give you a chance. So some of them unfairly evict you. They're ready to evict you sometimes within 3 days, 30 days, or 60 days. And then they tack on a late fee of $200 or more. And from what I was told from a rental company, that they can tack on a late fee of up to an upward of 8%. So there's a new law that's coming into effect in January. So a lot of these property owners and people who own these properties, how it used to be, they would have a manager that lived in the properties on site, and they would handle all of the problems that happen, the maintenance and whatnot. You don't have very many of those type of buildings. A lot of these properties are people just living in the units, and all they're concerned about is collecting the rent. That's what I've witnessed. A lot of the properties don't have a manager or an acting manager. Some of them do, and some of them don't. And some of these newer properties, you have to go to an office, or you have to, either email, or you have to by mail, via mail, contact the manager or the owner, or through phone number contact. They don't personally live on the site of where you stay. So whenever there's trouble in some of the units or in the property, on the property, they don't really feel any type of way about the safety of the people who live in the unit. So I've noticed that has happened a lot. That's increased. So a lot of times, some of the properties, even though they charge high rents, it may not even be safe to live there. I noticed that in South LA, that there's some properties where, this newer generation of young people will do this Airbnb, or they do this thing called couch surfing, where they stay for a little while. It's a short-term stay, or it's maybe a week or two, and they pay the person that actually is on the lease. They pay them $300, $400, and that's how they're able to pay their rent. But the people that they allow in the apartments, they trash the place, they fight, they have loud parties, and they tear up the around the neighborhood, or around the area, or the building. And they have a lot of cars, and they double park, they block you so you can't get in and out of some of the properties. And when you call the owner to help you with the circumstance, they just try to tell you to call the police, or they route you to the police. And when you call the police says, that's not in our jurisdiction, or something that we're supposed to be handling. You need to call your building management company or the owner of the building for them to intervene. But they don't want to intervene when you call the owner, because their main thing is rent and collecting money. They don't live on the property. They don't have family that lives on the property, so they don't care about the safety of their tenants. All they care about is that you can pay the bill or the rent, and they don't mind tacking on late fees. They do it unfairly, and you wind up having to actually take them to court over that stuff. And then when you see the properties, they don't clean up. They only clean up when they want to show the empty units. The empty units that people can't afford because they want more than $2,000, $3,000 a month for what they call luxury apartments or condos. And so a lot of that has been happening in Los Angeles County, and outskirts, neighboring cities. So I'm going to let you see this graph. So this is sort of an extension from what I already did. So if you can see to my right, LA County homelessness, the graph of how it has jumped. And so initially, I believe I showed a backdrop where you can see this is how it looks literally on many streets in Los Angeles. Homeless populations are surging in Los Angeles, and it has multiple articles about what has happened thus far. And so these are some of the graphs, so you can see what has happened. And so LA County's homelessness soars. So you see the numbers that are dark are the unsheltered people. The numbers that are light are the people that are in 13,334 are living in shelters, 31,025 are unsheltered. That's a total of 42,828. And this right here, this was back 2015, 16, 17, and had jumped. So back in 2015, it was 31,000. Now from 2017, it had jumped to 42,000. So if I jump over here and you see where it is closer to our year, you see that 60,000 people, LA County homelessness population from the years of 2011, 39,000 more were out on the street, and from 2000 In 18, it was 52,765, and then to 2019, 58,936. It had jumped. So homelessness jumped 12% in LA County and 16% in the city. And so that is not good news, folks. And so this is what we're seeing around in the neighborhoods. And so it is increased, and a lot of it is not just because people have mental illness. You have people living out of tents, as you see here. You have people that are living out of hotels and motels, cheap ones. Then you have people that are sleeping out of their car or out of RVs. You have these RV families, and they park on a certain side of the street, and they're asked the police to move, and they get harassed oftentimes because sometimes you see some of those people, they're so downtrodden. There's some that are working and then some that are so downtrodden that sometimes the neighborhood residents feel uneasy about the groups that are RVs that are parked along under freeways or on the side of roads. So a lot of times they're asked to relocate. So they park in places where you only have a certain number of hours that you can be there. And a lot of times people will see there's a group of RVs that sort of sit side by side. And so you also have an issue where older people who are on fixed incomes are now becoming the face of homelessness, because not because they have mental problems or they have some type of problem with like substance abuse, because they don't make the money that they did when they were in their younger years. They're either have health problems, they've gotten older, they're on a fixed income, so they only make a certain amount of money. So I don't know if you heard that story about where they had all these elderly people that were living in a mobile home community, and even the mobile home management company was trying to raise their space rent fees. And so they raised their space rent fees so high that it made it seem as though that the people would have to be forced to move or figure out where to move their mobile home. And if they can't afford to do so, because I believe there would be a fee to relocate, then that would be a whole other issue in and of itself altogether. And so a lot of those people were fighting just to stay in their mobile home park area. They had invested money in those mobile homes because, see, when you buy a mobile home, you own the mobile home, but the space, the land, you don't really own. You have to rent that space. And so in those mobile home parks, a lot of times when all the rents started rising, it seems like a lot of times you see all of the landlords, they get their head together. It's like it's a round table. They sit together and they decide, we're going to raise the rent with these apartments. We're going to put a few fixtures in there, do a paint job, slap on some glue somewhere here, stick in a microwave and a dishwasher, and then we'll call it a luxury apartment. And then they decide to raise the rents to $2 or $3 grand, $5, $6, $7 grand a month. And so now you have all these other entities getting in on it. Even the mobile home companies trying to raise rents on people who are elderly. It's so wrong. It's cruel. And so you have this, what Bernie Sanders said, what is the 1%? Small percentage of people who can live high on the hog. You see downtown of Los Angeles, it has changed a great deal. There are some places in downtown Los Angeles that don't look the same. Before it looked like it wasn't really just like mom and pop, maybe a few theaters, some clothing stores, maybe some vendors that are trying to sell some stuff. But now it has transformed into a mecca for the elite or the semi-wealthy and people who don't mind spending $6 grand a month for a loft or a high-rise condo. And so a lot of times they have an elevator, you're paying for the amenities like the swimming pool, and then you go up and then you're on the rooftop and you can see the skyline and all of the lights and what have you. But that's what you're paying for. Not even just living, but living like as if you're some kind of movie star. So you see people downtown in some of these expensive lofts, and they are walking their dog, they're jogging, they're sitting in bars, they're eating, they're drinking, And just a couple of blocks down, there's Skid Row and tents underneath freeways in downtown areas. And if the homeless people come over there to the areas where the wealthy and the people who like to spend money frequent, they're policed heavily and they're ticketed or they're shunned. They're told to get out, and they could even face jail time. So a lot of stuff has changed dramatically in the downtown area. You got the Staples Center, you have the Convention Center, and everything is really amped up. A lot of lighting. There's some new hotels that are being built for the very wealthy elite, and they're continuously building. And in pockets of Los Angeles and the city, there are houses where the land developers are coming and trying to persuade families that are homeowners to sell their house so that they can build condos and luxury apartments. So they're luring them with these beautiful offers to move, sell their house, and that they'll buy the property for probably a large sum of money. And so what ends up happening, it takes the families out of those what were once communities where they were thriving communities of families, and now they have these condos and these high rise or these loft apartments that are like $3,000 and upward. And the rents are extremely high and it's extremely expensive and unreasonable, unmanageable economically for the regular family or average working person that makes a less income to live and survive there. So you wind up seeing more and more homelessness. So that unlike what people are saying in the news, some of these people, maybe they don't live in the neighborhoods, and that might be one of the reasons why they really don't understand what all is going on. They're not familiar with Los Angeles as much. Maybe they don't have anybody they know that actually is going through a situation, so it's hard for them to understand why there's so much homelessness. Maybe they just think it's substance abuse or it's mental illness. It isn't. It isn't only substance abuse and mental illness. There's a lot of other variants that are going on that have caused people to wind up on the street. Some people are living out of their cars. Like I said, some people are living out of RVs. They're living out of motels, cheap hotels. They're living like from house to house, couch surfing, or maybe they're doing short-term stays in buildings that are coming up also. There are buildings that are coming up that are called short-term units. Those short-term units, you don't pay as much, but you don't stay there as long. You can stay there for like maybe a couple of months. It depends. And so for the young people today, that might seem good, but when you want a family or when you want your own privacy, it's a whole different ball game. They pretty much have it set up where you're living like communal living. And so that's the most affordable at this time for young people unless they're with a roommate. The thing that I know that some young people do is the couch surfing, the Airbnb, or the short-term stays, or they live as a roommate, or they stay with their parents longer and rent out a room or rent out a space. And so that's the most affordable way to go at this time. What I known it to be before is young people would get out on their own. They have a couple of dollars, get on their own 2 feet, and they're able to get their own place after they land a job or get in a career of some sort. Now it's a little more effort, a little more planning, and it takes a little more time because things are a lot more expensive, and that's what I've known it to be. Now it has changed a whole lot, and so it's not what it used to be. You can't just get out, find a place, and boom, everything's all good. Some people might know people. They might know people who own property or something, and they might give them less rent they have to pay. But that's not everybody's situation, unfortunately. And so it's a lot different. The programs that have to do with like low income, like Section 8, a lot of those landlords that are out there, some of them have kind of pushed people out of their place if they have Section 8 vouchers because it seemed like there was this rush for landlords or property owners to get this high rise or luxury condo type rent. And so when that came into effect, it seemed like it was a collective. Like everybody that was a landlord or a property owner, they all sat at the same table and said, high rent means more money in our pockets. And that means more homelessness. So that's what's caused a lot of homelessness as well, is the driven up prices of the rents of some of these apartment buildings. And I wanted to go deeper into that because there are some apartment buildings, or there's some what they quote unquote call luxury apartments that aren't what they claim to be. They have bugs, they have a lot of crime, they have people that are renting like short-term stay with one person that leases the apartment, and they might be fighters, they might be drug people, they might be people who are doing illegal activity, and that's how they're able to pay the rent. So they're not good at screening the tenants anymore. So a lot of time what ends up happening, you live in units where they say luxury apartments, or they're nice apartments, or they have a few fixtures that look like they might be something you might like a dishwasher, or they have like maybe a microwave that's already installed into the unit. But what ends up happening, you move in, you stay there, then they start increasing the rents, then they increase the late fees. Sometimes the late fees go as high as $200 or more unfairly. They won't wait for you. They don't work with you. In the beginning, they act like they're fair and they're going to work with you, but that's just a game they play to lure you and to get you to stay. And then once you sign that contract, you're there, and then things go after a year, month to month. Now they start increasing things. They lie to try to get you in there, and they'll tell you, we won't increase it because we're already at a high cap. And so that was what was told to me at one time. The property manager, he doesn't live on site, and so a lot of times some of these units, you'll find that what used to be, there's property managers that live on site, or they're close by, they can see what's going on, so you don't see as much riffraff going on. But now a lot of them don't live on the site. The property owners, they don't have family or friends or anybody that lives there, so they don't care what happens. All they care about is getting the rent, collecting the rent. If you don't have it, then they can harass you. At least that's the way they think. And so that's what I've experienced. I had friends that experienced. And so I wanted to warn you all that a lot of those units they claim are luxury are not what they appear to be. So I sent a video of one unit where this person, actually they got a picture of themselves with money falling all over the place. And I don't know the name of the actual guy, but they own this property called Golden Bee, and that's but one of many properties that are in South LA and all over Los Angeles, as a matter of fact, to be exact, where they own a lot of what they say luxury apartments. And so they charge an upward of $2,000 or more. And a lot of times they raise the rent unfairly. Sometimes they charge late fees. They say they can charge for late fees of 8% or more. And so I feel that's illegal or unfair. So in January, they're supposed to implement a law. And I was going to actually look for it because I know that I spoke with Consumer Affairs and they said there was a law that was going to come into effect about the high rent increases, that there was only a minimum, or there was only to a certain point that they could do increases. But a lot of these people have increased people's rent and priced them out of their units. That's why you see this picture here of people living in tents, or they're living in their car, or they're living with a neighbor or friend because they have no more unit or no more apartment that they can afford to live in because they've been priced out of the neighborhood. So a lot of what you see too is a lot of black people that are homeless, and you can see that. So what I've noticed is a lot of unfairness going on. There's a certain number of people who feel like they're entitled, and that others don't count. All that counts is their money, their wallet, and their family and their needs. And they pretty much have turned their back on others. They are heartless, they're cold, and they don't have any other remorse than to just look at it as, oh, well, you didn't pay the rent, you're out. And so this is what we're seeing all over Los Angeles. It's pictures like this. And I hate to say it, but this is everywhere in the LA area. You'll see in the backdrop, you see these nice apartments and these nice units, but you see a lot of people that are sitting outside who do not have the money to afford to move in these beautiful high rise or what they claim as luxury apartment units. And so that is what you're seeing. You're seeing people who maybe once lived in the neighborhood, but they can no longer live there because it is too expensive. And so the numbers of homeless population has jumped tremendously. It jumps from 12% across LA County. And so this is the original backdrop that I had in one video. Some people actually wanted to hear what my commentary was about. The homeless crisis is actually not a homeless crisis, it's a national crisis, and it is spreading. It's not just in LA County, it is moving to other cities, other metropolitan cities like New York, Atlanta even. I've heard of some places out there, Georgia, some places where these land developers, they see this, houses that maybe they can make an offer to a family that lives there for like many decades, generation, and they try to give you a lump sum of money to move you out so they can tear down your house and make condos over a neighborhood that used to be a thriving neighborhood of families. And so I just wanted to say this is what we're seeing more of in the Los Angeles region. This is what we're seeing more in California, and it's growing. And this is why I'm saying this honestly, because there are a lot of families, there are a lot of people who are being displaced, and a lot of them are being displaced simply because they don't make six figures, or they don't make high rise or luxury loft or luxury apartment type money, and they're having to make hard decisions. Do I work one job? Do I work two jobs? Do I work three jobs? Do I work a different job? Do I work longer hours? Do I move in other people so that they can stay and then pay me $300, $200 on in? But that becomes a problem, because it would be one thing if people were presentable and they didn't keep up a lot of trouble. But if that person is leasing the apartment and then they do Airbnb, or they move in people that are fighters, people that are drug dealers, then now all the people that live around it have to be victim, or have to be subjected to whatever chaos or violence ensues in that apartment building or those units. And so a lot of that is happening. And so I just wanted you to see there's also homeless deaths that have been happening because nobody has really stepped in and done anything about these issues. They talk about it, they act as like they're going to do something about it, and every year it seems to, the numbers increase, and it seems to get worse and worse and worse. And I'm here to tell you honestly that it's not only mental illness. Mental illness is but one of the issues. Substance abuse is one of the issues, but it's another one of the issues. But those are symptoms. Also, because you can have a person that is in their right mind, and then if they're on the street long enough, they might have some mental issues after being on the street with no food or not having a place to go and no decent shelter. Yeah, it can mess with your mind. And so after a while, if you're cold, the weathers have changed lately. It's not summer weather, it's cold, it's raining. You're being told to get out. get out in the middle of storefronts. There's no shelter. The shelters are filled up because we have an increased population of homeless folks. So what ends up happening is that you have people that will medicate themselves. They self-medicate on, maybe drugs and alcohol. And what do people do? Sometimes when they're out in the cold, they use more alcohol because they're trying to warm their body. And so it's not the best method, but it may be the only method. And then you wonder, okay, well, how are they getting this money to do all of this stuff? And maybe the little money they do have from begging, panhandling, or maybe they get like maybe a small lump of money, but it's not enough and it doesn't go far, and they're not outside with a heater, so they pitch a tent and they get a lot of blankets, and then they might buy some cheap alcohol. So a lot of times that's what happens to some of these folks. You see them out there. They once had a job, maybe they once had a family, something went wrong, they fell through the cracks. Maybe it wasn't that kind of circumstance. It wasn't, mental illness. Maybe they had an apartment, they had a unit, but the rent was too high, they got priced out, they ended up in a homeless shelter. And so there's a lot of different stories. Everybody's story is not synonymous with one another. So what I'm saying is a lot of this homelessness too, that a lot of what has contributed to a lot of the jump and increase in the homelessness is because of the high rents. And I want you to see something real quick here. And if you don't believe me, I want you to see what I'm talking about. And I'm going to use this as an example. And I know this is going deep into this, but I want to do this because I want you to see that an average person cannot afford this type of rent. And so these are the rents that you see. So I want you to see this. Okay. And I don't know if it's going to show the rent. I'm just assuming it may. But I want you to see. Now, this is the property that I was telling you about. It looks beautiful. It looks like it's a luxury apartment. And those are models. They show you models of apartments so that you can see a model of an apartment of what it looks like. So they have something listed here called availabilities. Okay, and some of the apartment units are in the South LA region. So I want you to see what the rents are. They're like, where a 2-bedroom and a 2-bathroom is $2,095. But what ends up happening is when you move in these units, they show you a picture of something that looks beautiful. And for a 3-bedroom is $2,495. And they show you all of these units in different places, and it looks like it's cheap. Okay, so now they show you units. Now this building in particular here is where a lot of crime, a lot of fighting, a lot of illegal activity goes on. But they're showing you a model of this building as if it looks beautiful, probably the cleaner version when the building didn't have as many, people living there. And so I'm not just going to pick on one building management company. I'm just telling you, but the rents, the lowest, this might be on the lower spectrum, but it's still relatively high because not a lot of people can really afford that kind of rent because that is expensive. For some people's incomes, they may not be making that kind of money, but that's what the rents are going for. So there's another place that also is big in South LA. It's called Solar Rentals. Solar Rentals also is in South LA, and it's down on Vermont, and they have their rental unit. So this is the office of Solar Rentals right here. And I'm going to look on their site so you can see. I don't know if they show how much. They also have a similar site. It almost looks just like the one we just looked at. Looks like they all work together. So this is why I feel like most of these landlords or these rental companies pretty much are on the same page when it comes to the high rents. They all have the same scheme of things. So I'm going on their site, and it's showing how much their rents are. Okay, so now surprisingly, they're a little less expensive than, I guess this is what's available now, but they're a little less expensive than the other company. But the thing is, you got to be careful, because even though they appear to be like they're a little less expensive, you got to know what the neighborhood is like. And you got to know who's around in the area and what kind of stuff is going on in that area. What kind of people are in that area. And so I believe they say that they accept City Section 8 or Section 8, and some of these programs will still accept Section 8, but they still, mind you, they'll still go up on the rent. They'll have like huge rental increases. I don't believe that these are the only apartments that they have available. I think they may have some others available as well. So I guess it depends on what you're looking for. But that's just to give a few. Now I wanted to go into, since we're doing that, I'm gonna go back on here, and I'm just gonna show you in downtown LA. Downtown Los Angeles apartments. Okay, so downtown Los Angeles apartments. So brand new apartments for rent in downtown LA. And there are a lot of ads, a lot of places that have popped up. It says luxury living downtown LA, and I just really wanted you to see. They have beautiful website where you can see this beautiful floor plan, and you got a picture of the landscape of all of Los Angeles, and you live in the high rise. It says now leasing, but a lot of times when you go on these sites for downtown Los Angeles, you never see a price for, there's never a price for how much these lofts are. And I'm going to tell you why. The reason why is because they're not even in the 2 or 3 or 4K. They're like 6K or maybe even more. And like the super wealthy or super rich, or people that are working, making like 6 figures or more, live in these luxury, what they call residences. And so they're so expensive, there's no way that you are a regular family that works making like a minimum wage or a regular wage, where you're making less than the 6 figures, can afford this type of living. And so this is the reason why you have this increased population of homelessness. And so a lot of these rents are extremely high. It's extremely unfair, and it's unreasonable. And so I'm going to even show you, where does it say spacious downtown LA apartments? This is the Axis. And I've driven past this place many times. And so this is the way they look on the outside, these buildings downtown, the Axis, your corner of downtown LA, the Axis. And so they make it look like it has, some of the buildings, they're mixed use. They have storefronts, they have, like a coffee or a diner underneath. People are walking their dogs. They have like a bar down below. People will hang out there. There's a gallery they claim they have amenities, which they do a lot of times. And see, they make it look fancy. And this is fancy living. And so this is the way, you'd want to live if you had that type of income, of course, if you can afford it. And so this is how the Axis looks. I don't know if anybody has seen this building. This is in downtown LA. I've driven past it multiple times. And so they never show you how much some of these places are. Some, they used to do that. Some of them would show you. Now, it looks gorgeous. This is probably like the courtyard, or sometimes this scene is on the rooftop. And so this is really what you're paying for. It's not just your apartment per se. This looks like it's on the rooftop, as you can see the buildings in the backdrop, in the background. And so this is the reason why a lot of this is going on. Let's bring it back to the homelessness population that's jumping. And so they as in these landlords want a lot of money for all of this high-rise living. And so this is fancy. It seems like a dream. And it is. For those, this is what you're going to get. All of this is what you're going to get. It's like you can just run through it. And then there's many other buildings in the downtown of Los Angeles that are being transformed into what you see here. And so you are not going to pay $2 and $3 and $4 grand for this. You're going to pay more than $7 or $8 grand, maybe more than that, for this type of living. And so that is the reason why you'll have a lot of beauty, but see in the background, you don't see any blinds or anything like that, because a lot of these units, it's beautiful, but a lot of them are empty. And they don't have a lot of people living in those units. There's a lot of vacancy because it's expensive. And so it looks perfect, picture perfect, because you're not going to see very many people in these units. And so they stay empty because people cannot afford it. And so I'm just being real with you. I'm just being honest. So they have many websites that are like this, where they pretty much showcase their buildings. And so that's what you're going to see. So you have a lot of people who cannot afford these places because the rents are too high. And you have year by year where it has increased. You have graph after graph where you can see as rents grow, homelessness increases. I mean, it takes no rocket scientist to have to figure this out. So this is the most accurate. It's basically what I've been saying. As the rents are growing and they're increasing, the homelessness is increasing along with it. And so this is what we are seeing, and that's the reason why you see the homelessness that you see, and you're going to continue to see even more homelessness. So this was from 2010 to 2017 right here. And even back then, they were stating that the rents grow and the homelessness increases. So basically that's what I said in the other video. I'm sorry for the noise background, but that's what's been going on. It's sad, but it's a true story that unfortunately the homelessness crisis is not going away if we continue to have unaffordability, which they're saying housing affordability and homelessness. According to the National Alliance to End Homelessness, the nation is currently facing one of the most severe affordable housing crises in history. Not surprisingly, those living in poverty are the most significantly affected. So Kitsap County, in the 3 years between 2015 to 2018, average apartment rents have increased over 40% since the year of 2000. Rents have nearly doubled in the county. So up until 1980, communities in the U.S. had plenty of affordable housing. It's just basically what I had been saying. Because when I moved here, I was like maybe 9 or 10, and I remember when people could just find an apartment. You know, you're a young person, you were starting your life out, you could just find an apartment. And now it is not like that for young people. Young people have to find a roommate, or they have to stay with their parents longer, and they have to rent a space out, or they have to help their parents with paying the bills as a form of rent, because they cannot just find their own place anymore. The programs that they have for Section 8 people discriminate you. Those apartments that you're seeing, they don't want to accept Section 8. There's a very few of them that do accept it. And when they do, you don't know how long you're going to be able to stay there, because that's a dying program as far as I'm concerned. Because what they've tried to do is they've tried to open it up to veterans, and some of the affordability housing has a long waiting list, and it makes it hard for people who are really just trying to work and they're trying to make more money, because you're told you make too much money, then you can't live in these affordable, they claim, units. So you're in limbo. So you're making too much money to live in these low income units, and you're making less money and you're not enough money to live in these luxury units. So where does that put that person or those type of families? So it's what I'm trying to say. The message I'm conveying is that they're pretty much put in a really tight spot, and they're vulnerable. And so that meant that when a family or individual experienced a crisis and lost housing, they could quickly find another place to live. And this was in the early 80s, 1980 and onward up until now. But by the end of the mid-80s, a shrinking supply of low-cost housing resulted in the combination of rising rents, slow, stagnant wage growth, and the lower income people continued, and it worsened. And so nearly 1/3 of all homeowners, 31%, and half of all renters, 50%, are spent 30% of their or more of their income on housing in 2011. Nearly 2/3 of all the renters, 64%, and the homeowners of 63%, earning less than 30% of their area median family income, which is AMI in abbreviation in brackets. So an example, low income households is what it means. So spent more than half their income on housing. So these are record breaking statistics, as this was not the situation in the decades past. HUD to 2013. So today 11 million extremely low-income households in the U.S. pay at least half of their income towards housing, putting them at risk for housing instability and homelessness. So in 2014, it was estimated that 50% of all renters in Kitsap County were paying over 1/3 of their income in housing costs. And so the community action needs assessment. So even in another county, y'all, that's not even Los Angeles. And so I'm just telling you that that's probably part like a sister city, because it did mention a lot about Los Angeles and made the comparison. So Kitsap Homes of Compassion, so rooms, it's Kitsap County right here. But I'm thinking that's Kitsap County, but homelessness has happened even in the LA area. It's happened in LA County. It's happened in New York. I hear that the rents are really high there, that there's a whole lot of homelessness out there. And so it just seems to get worse and worse and worse. The reason why I guess I clicked on Kitsap County is because it was very accurate about some of the rent rising is the cause of the homeless crises, or national crises that is now, as it has become. So this is what we're seeing. This is San Pedro Street right here. This is homeless populations are surging in Los Angeles. And the other video, I guess there was a video of downtown Los Angeles. And so this is what I'm basically using the photo that they have here. You can see the tents that are all over in the Los Angeles downtown area. And so I'm going to wait because I guess it's loading, but it's just really bad. You know, it has not gotten any better. It seems to grow. And so this is what I see. If you just drive in Los Angeles, you're going to see this like for every 2 blocks, there's going to be somebody laying on a bus bench. They're going to be in a tent. You see it under the freeways, and then when you get in the downtown area, and what's sad is you'll see there's some streets where you'll see people walking their dogs, and they seem like they're living good, they're jogging, and you'll see little coffee shops like Starbucks. You'll see some nice coffee shops and people eating, but then just a couple of streets away, you'll see what you see here, tents everywhere. And this is downtown Los Angeles, as a matter of fact, this picture. The number of homelessness people in Los Angeles jumped over the past year. And so that was this article was June 5th, 2019. And so that was not that long ago. And so it has not changed. So the grim stats from around California have piled up in recent weeks. So Alameda County, the number of homeless residents jumped 43% over the past 2 years. In Orange County, the number was 42%. In Kern County, volunteers surveying the region's homeless population found a 50% increase over 2018. San Francisco, it notched up to 17% increase in 2017. And on Tuesday of Los Angeles, officials released the results of their most recent count. Homelessness was up 12% over the last year in the county and 16% in Los Angeles, the city of Los Angeles. So that puts LA County's homeless population at 58,936 and the cities at 36,300. And so yet communities around the state have been funneling more money into services for the homelessness, like LA's Measure H sales tax, which is adding about $355 million each year to the arsenal. And so what is going on? Is the money really helping? So why are more people living in squalid conditions on the street or in cars? Advocates of the homeless say it's upsetting, but no surprise. And so our housing crisis is our homeless crisis. Elise Buick, President and Chief Executive of United Way Greater Los Angeles, told me. And we have got to get people to understand that. So she said that the people struggling with mental illness or substance abuse issues and who are living in encampments are often the most visible. But it's a myth that people experiencing homelessness decline help or prefer to live outdoors. So one of that contributes to the misconception about the effectiveness of often costly services. So it goes into all this feel on all of this stuff. So it says, I guess, and it ends pretty quickly. It talks about mental illness. It talks about all of that. And I'm just adding this in here. But it's not talking about the regular families that are paying the high rents. So you notice they don't really go and delve into that very much. So let me continue. Peter Lynn, Executive Director of the Los Angeles Homeless Service Authority, emphasizes the Measure H money has significantly increased the number of people in the region service providers have been able to help. According to the authority's data, outreach workers engage with 34,110 people over the year, which has tripled to the number before Measure H. So almost 1,400 permanent supportive housing units are built with money of Measure HHH. A $1.2 billion bond are set to open in 2019 and 2020 fiscal year. And so I don't feel like the first honest year to assess will be to freeze frame from now to the year. Mayor Eric Garcetti of LA told me in late of last week. So ultimately, though he said housing affordability was the biggest factor driving homelessness, and so Angelino would need it to earn about $47.52 an hour just to afford the median monthly rent, according to LAHSA figures. And so although there's, like I said, that's probably the only thing that showed that the rents are really high, and if your job's not paying you what you can pay for this high rent, like you'd have to be a high income earner, like making this type of money an hour. And most jobs that I've known, most people I've known, probably you're lucky if you make 22 an hour. and not many people are making that, and usually the higher income earners that are making like this type of income right here, $47 or more an hour, they're living in the more expensive units comfortably because they have wiggle room to, have emergency money on hand, to be able to save a little and take a trip or do some other fancy things or whatever, and go in a restaurant, whatever, and have fun. But a person that is living with not that much income, they're just trying to live paycheck to paycheck and make it to see the next paycheck. And so although I'm adding that in there, so although there's broad acknowledgement from the governor, Gavin Newsom, on down, that part of the solution is millions more homes, legislative fixes that would spur housing construction have proven knotty, to say the least. So the Senate Bill 50, which was effectively killed for the year, would have allowed a denser development in many areas, including some neighborhoods of single-family homes. And so Mr. Garcetti said that a bill was definitely a bad stick for us. So a bill that would threaten the neighborhood character, he said, in the LA, he noted, builds more than its propositional or proportional share of housing compared to with the rest of the county. So though Mr. Garcetti says that he's in favor of the measure, that would force other cities that aren't allowing new construction to add to their housing supplies, and he has been focused on a legislation that would slow skyrocketing rents. And so that's the part that I wanted to get out, is the rents are high as hell. So this is the number one issue in every city in California, he said, that's skyrocketing rent. And so we often link the sites that limit access to non-subscribers, blah, blah, blah. Appreciate it. Okay, so anyway, I guess that's a whole article. So I must have read it to its entirety. I'm going to click off here because I don't know why that was there. Maybe I clicked on that. But anyway, see what it says. An Angelino would need to earn $47.52 an hour just to afford the median monthly rent in LA housing. And then it made mention of the skyrocketing rents. And so it says that he's been focused on legislation that would slow skyrocketing rents. And so I'm going to try to see if, this is what you see here. And I know this is a long video, and I'm not afraid to show this is what's going on. It's not a lie. It's not something I'm making up. And if you don't live in the Los Angeles area, or you're not aware of what's going on, this is happening. And people who are super wealthy, they can relocate, they can move into these fancy apartments, they can sell their house, buy a new house, move somewhere else, relocate. But a person that's working, making paycheck to paycheck, or they're just making ends meet, they cannot just comfortably take a trip, get on a plane, go visit relatives, move here and hither, and have the flexibility of mobility to move about in the world. And so a lot of these people that you see that are homeless, look at who they are. They're African Americans. A lot of them are African Americans, or they're Hispanics. They're people, they're on the street. They're, begging for a crust of bread. They can barely, feed their families, if they even have families that are even living with them anymore. They've been spread out or separated in some kind of form or fashion. There's been a lot of targeting of people of color. And so a lot of this find that the most vulnerable individuals are people of African American descent, or they're Hispanic, or they're out on the street, and you see a lot of homeless black people. It's just very sad. And so this is what I've been seeing. And so there's more pictures here, y'all. It's just, the sight that you see in all of this is really disturbing. This is what you're going to see in Los Angeles. This is what Los Angeles looks like. I'm letting you see this. It's very sad, but this is what you see in LA. You see this in this is not even, some of these streets are not even Skid Row. Some of them are Skid Row, and some of them are not Skid Row. Some of them are like in parts of Los Angeles, of downtown, or parts of LA where it's not even Skid Row, and you see these scenes here of people just on the street and they have nowhere to go. And so it says military sexual assault makes veterans twice as likely to become homeless. There's all kinds of different stats, things that are happening. It's sad. So this is Los Angeles. This is what it's becoming. And so this is what you'll see: clothes on the street, trash everywhere, and then in these high-rise places are these luxury apartments. They want this high skyrocketing rent, and so okay, so Consumer Affairs was telling me that they were doing something called a rent stabilization. So they were saying that there's a law that is coming into effect. Allowable rent increase in Los Angeles 2019-2020. So California rent increase laws of 2019, and they are trying to start something that is going to come into effect as soon as January. So a law limits rent increases to 5% each year plus inflation until January 1st. It would apply to rent increases on or after March 15, 2019 to prevent landlords from raising rents just before the caps go into place. California, Oregon are now the only places that cap rent increases statewide. And so you see this is Governor Newsom right here. And so this California governor signed statewide rent control law. And so before this thing had been signed, those landlords saw that, and they've been increasing late fees on rents. They've been increasing rents as quick as possible to try to get as much as they can out of people before these things actually start taking effect in January. And so they've been trying to do as much as they can to try to make people's lives miserable. And so, and that's pretty much how it goes. So, I know I'm long-winded, and I've said probably more than my share on this issue, but I just felt that it was important because I don't think that sometimes when you see the news that they really go into detail as to why there's so many people on the street. They only tell you like some of the issues, but they don't go into all of the details or all of the issues. I feel like a lot of this that has skyrocketed the jump in the number of homeless people is the rising rents. And so that's the reason why I was showing some of the places, some of the real fancy places versus some of the places that are like just that, a little over $1,000 and $2,000, and that's like the lowest in California now for some of these places. And even like if you're at $1,000, like that's what, like a studio or a 1-bedroom, and some of those are at $2,000, and that's what makes it so hard for people to live. That's why you see the increased numbers of tent cities and homelessness in California. And so you see all these graphs here. This is an ongoing problem. This has been growing. It's been an ongoing problem, and it just seems like it'll never end. You never see this dropping. You never see this dropping. It's always going up, and there's like a little dip, and then it goes up, even higher every year. So having said that, I'm going to let this video go. I'm just going to leave it on this so you can see that this is not a joke, y'all. There are a lot of people that are just like out there on the street with no place to go. And it just seems like this world has really changed where people can be so quick to just step over or turn a blind eye on all of this. And this is not just a crisis, this is a national crisis. It's just not limited to one city, but it's growing to other cities. And you heard me read something about Kitsap County, and there's other places. It's happening all over, and something's got to give. Thanks for listening.